This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. We got a show for you guys today, as always, starting with This Week in Baseball, moving over to the Ryan Ward Conundrum. Really curious to why he has not played a single game for the Los Angeles Dodgers. How about the Toronto Blue Jays? Looking to run the table this year, maybe? I don't know. Get our thoughts here shortly. And of course, those second half demons that you've all been talking about, we're going to take some time and talk about them as well. But we start the show where we always start the show. Flax, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good. Body hurts a lot. So, quick update for our bus riders. I know you guys care a lot about this. We did win our men's league championship. Ryan and I finished up the season strong on the whole. I started the game on the mound through 6 innings, gave up 4 runs, 3 earned. We're not going to talk about walks and strikeouts because we didn't have our stuff and we grinded. And it is what it is against the best team in the league. But we did take home the W, and I threw 131 pitches. But I actually don't have to throw again for another 10 months if I don't want to. So the reality of the situation is we let it all out. Maybe not the smartest thing to do. Body hurts today. But besides that, and on top of that, the Commanders won week 1. So we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good.
It was definitely a great weekend. Flax built up all the way to the start, ladies and gentlemen, and it was all culminating to this. He looked me dead in the eyes in the 6th inning when I was playing shortstop and said, "Would you believe that I didn't have my right arm angle for five innings?"
Yeah, I forgot. Just forgot that like three or four starts ago, I found an arm angle that just works better. Stuff just like moves a little more. It's a little sharper, and I totally forgot yesterday that I had figured that out. So the 6th inning started. I was throwing my 3 warm-up pitches because I don't like to throw warm-up pitches. I only have so many bullets in the chamber. I'm throwing my 3 warm-up pitches, 1 of each pitch, and I go to throw the slider, and I just kind of got out to the side on it a little bit more of like a 3/4 arm angle instead of over the top, and it was way nastier, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. And then that inning, I finally was able to throw the slider for strikes and command it, which is what I have been doing for the last 4 weeks. So we figured it out.
131 pitches. You did great. We appreciate you. One in the books for the Denver Jays, ladies and gentlemen. Nice and great compared to the way we finished last season. But back to the baseball you guys care about. This Week in Baseball, Flax, I'll start us off with these awards. Jacob, Marcy, and Roman Anthony named Rookies of the Month on their respective sides of the league. Shea Bangaliers and Bryce Terang, who needs a great nickname for the amount of home runs he hit this month, Players of the Month on their respective sides of the league. Trevor Rogers of the Baltimore Orioles and Freddie Peralta of the Milwaukee Brewers, Pitchers of the Month. And what will come as no surprise to anybody, at least for the first name here, Aroldis Chapman and Raisel Iglesias, Relievers of the Month. Flax, what else happened this week in baseball?
Yeah, we had a couple debuts that were pretty important. Brandon Sproat, the third man in the trio coming out of the prospect list from the Mets, came out behind Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, made his first career start, 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 7 Ks. Honestly, I told you this yesterday. I think his start yesterday was his best start in months. I think at the AAA level, he was getting a little long in the tooth, and the stuff was just known. And I think he got to the big leagues, and stuff was good. He made some really big pitches in some different counts and in some different situations. The Mets are going to ride these guys through the rest of the way home and probably into the postseason. If Nolan McLean keeps throwing the way he's throwing, very reasonably could be their Game 1 starter, considering I don't know who else would be. Sal Stewart, the number 1 overall prospect for the Reds, made his debut in Cincinnati. had a hit in his first game, has now clubbed his first career home run. It is such a sweet right-handed swing. It's just kind of one of your short, stocky, strong, powerful right-handed swings. It's everything you want in a guy. And I'll tell you what, the Reds are missing in their lineup is a little bit of pop. It'd be nice to see Sal Stewart find his way in there and help this team continue moving in the right direction. And then on the national side, CJ Stubbs, brother of, first name's
Garrett Stubbs.
Garrett Stubbs. So for some reason, it started with a B in my mind. It did not. And pitcher Andrew Alvarez debuted together as the battery for the Nationals, both of them setting new records for the Nationals. Andrew Alvarez becoming the first National to go 5+ for a shutout victory in his debut, and CJ Stubbs, the first Nats catcher to catch a shutout in his debut. CJ Stubbs was later sent back down to AAA, but really good debut nonetheless. And then just around the league, a couple other pieces. Rangers 7-3 in their last 10, only a half game back as a wild card spot on September 8th when we're recording this. Giants 7-3 in their last 10, now only 4 games back of a wild card, making up sizable ground this week. Yankees now 2 games back of the Blue Jays in the AL East, still fighting for a division title there after taking 2-3 from the Blue Jays in the Bronx. Vlad Guerrero still dominating at the plate against the Yankees. Want to make sure that's known. And then to finish up this week in baseball, a new thing we're going to start doing. This day in baseball history, September 8th, on the day that we are recording, 2008, Gary Sheffield hit a grand slam for what was the 250,000th home run in MLB history. 250,000th home run in MLB history. So pretty cool.
And that happened in 2008.
2008. So yeah, you got to wonder where we're at now. That's math I don't want to do.
Only missing there, and I'll take the blame for this. Rangers are a game and a half out of the wild card.
Man.
I gave you that number, so we're gonna say that's on me. But enough about my mistake there. How about we move right into the meat and potatoes of today's episode?
And potentially the Dodgers' mistake.
It very well could be.
Transition there.
Ryan Ward, for those of you who don't know, outfielder, DH, 27 years old. He was drafted in the 9th round out of Bryant University by the Dodgers. He has worked his way up this organization and been a legitimate power threat his entire minor league career. We're talking about a guy who has had 21+ home runs in every single full season he's played within the Dodgers minor league organization, and that does include 2 30+ seasons, both at the AAA level, one being this year. In 2025, Ryan Ward has slashed 292, 383, 552 with 32 home runs, 31 doubles, 5 triples, 115 RBIs, and 15 stolen bases over 133 AAA games.
Real quick.
Really looks like a bat. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm going to save you here real quick. He was drafted in the 8th round of the 2019 draft, and I think that's where the numbers got mixed up.
Man, I am really messing up.
No.
All right,
that's okay.
That's the whole podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Listen, I just want to it's about the listeners. I want them to have the right information. We can be wrong all day as long as we correct ourselves.
Ward has been very, very good for the Dodgers. Rosters have expanded, and Ryan Ward is still on the Oklahoma City roster. He is not up with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I recognize that this is one of the best rosters in all of baseball, but you'd expect with roster expansion, a guy who's put together the numbers that we just gave in 2025 would probably be getting some opportunity to help this team. Flax, before I dive into some of the analytics behind the type of season he's having and his improvements, what are your thoughts off cuff?
Well, I will say this. The Dodgers had some other moves that needed to be made in the expansion. They had to add pitching, so that was already one of their 2 spots. And around the catching position, they've had a flurry of injuries lately that they needed to make sure they were substantially loaded up on. That being said, they're paying a guy $17 million to play left field and hit 194 this year over 374 at-bats, I think is what Conforto's put up. Michael Conforto's not meeting muster as far as an MLB average left fielder. So there is a level to which why not give somebody else a chance who you have more controllability over, that could potentially be in your lineup next year and is playing at a good pace at this point and could be helpful to your team down the stretch. This is a team that is starving for offense. Starving for offense right now. Finding a guy who is putting up numbers at this pace right now and only improving at every level he gets to and every year that he plays makes me wonder what the decision making is. It could be financial, that they're sitting there saying, if I'm going to pay a guy $17 million, he's going to be on the team and play. Could be Dave Roberts sticking up for a guy that he still thinks could show value taking big league at bats. Dave Roberts is absolutely known to do that with his guys. But when I look at what Ryan Ward has done and the progression that he's had, this is not a drop in the bucket. This is not a surprising year that he's having. This is what's to be expected with a guy who's been progressing the way he has since being drafted in 2019. This is a full body of work at the minor league level that's putting the Dodgers in a pretty precarious situation come this offseason.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the other piece that you have to look at too, and it's something that I know you're well aware of, Ryan Ward is still not on the Dodgers 40-man roster. I think that has a lot to do with this decision at the current moment. They may not feel like they want to take somebody else off of that portion of the roster. Justin Dean was recently called up. Part of the play with Dean is he is an absolute speedster, so I think they're looking for that. Oh boy, there's a name I'm missing who I love, who's got like 6 World Series rings, and he's only
Terrence Gore?
There it is. Yes, Terrence Gore type speed. Thank you, Flax. However, the big name that you stated, which is the one that I agree with over everything else, is a guy that Ryan Ward could probably walk in, replace, and maybe give you more offense then, is Michael Conforto. At this point, why is that roster spot still his? It's not about the fact that I think he's an awful player, but guess what? We're down to the stretch here. Now, the catch is him not being on the 40-man roster means you've already lost your opportunity to have Ryan Ward potentially help you in the playoffs because he is not technically going to be playoff eligible. I think that has something to do with it here. Let's dive into why I think Ward probably should have been on the 40-man early and they should have given themselves an opportunity to potentially bring him up. Historically, he has a relatively high K rate. Well, in 2025, he's made huge strides and huge improvements. In 2024, his K rate was 26.8%. He's knocked that all the way down by 8% to an 18.9% K rate. He historically does not walk much. Surprise, surprise. A big swing and a miss guy not walking much shouldn't surprise any of you. But he's had huge improvements again this year, improving by 50% from an 8.1% K rate to a 8.1% walk rate to a 12.9% walk rate in 2025. He's pacing his best production metrics ever throughout his minor league career. At 27 years old, as he was a college draft pick in 2019, it's just relatively surprising that they haven't given him an opportunity. I actually liken this situation a lot to a guy they did give an opportunity and then quickly faded to the background, which was James Outman, who obviously got moved this year at the deadline. Again, just very precarious. We called this a conundrum on our outline, and I think that's really what I leave this to. They need a left-handed power bat. They're not, I think, starving for offense when you look at the group of players that they have is maybe a little bit overzealous from us because lack of production is probably coming from the fact that baseball is always going to be a roller coaster in some way, shape, or form. But the bigger surprise to me is he's not an option. That's where it confuses me.
I think when I look at the 40-man roster, and for those who don't know, the way that this works is when you're in the minor leagues, you don't have to be on the 40-man roster, but to be on a major league 26 or now 28-man roster with them expanded for September, you have to be a part of the 40-man roster. So if they want to bring you onto the 28-man roster, somebody has to come off of the 40-man roster for you to join it. Because right now they're sitting at 40 guys. The other option is that somebody who's on a 10 or a 15-day IL stint gets moved to a 60-day IL stint. If you get moved to the 60-day IL stint, you don't take one of the places on the 40-man, and that guy who is not currently on it could replace and take that role. The only guy that I would look at on the current 40-man that is an option to move to that 60-day IL would be Brock Stewart. Brock Stewart's a right-handed pitcher on a 15-day IL stint, but he's been there since August 16th. It is now September 8th. Longer than 15 days. He's obviously still trying to work up to getting into a rehab start, not a rehab start, but rehab outings. But that being said, if he doesn't, and you're still looking for bats, Ryan Ward would have been a good one to have. Now you're also looking for pitching, but you're getting guys like Michael Kopech back, you're getting Alex Vesia back. There are guys coming off the IL in a reasonable amount of time that could fill those gaps that maybe a Brock Stewart would have. It's a hard game to play, and I think this is the biggest struggle, is that the game's got to be played before you truly know where guys sit. The unfortunate thing is you could get a week from now and find out that Brock Stewart's got to be shut down for the year, in which case you could have looked back and said, well, it would have been nice to know on August 28th, we would have just put him on the 60-day IL and moved, Ryan Ward to the 40-man and had him available if we wanted to bring him up. Because you're not in that situation now, Ryan Ward is going to play the rest of the year in AAA, and then you're going to have to make a decision come the offseason of whether or not you add him to the 40-man as you start to shift some free agents off and as you start moving towards what next year looks like. Because here's the thing about Ryan Ward having gotten drafted in 2019, and it is going to be the 2026 offseason. Ryan Ward is now eligible for a Rule 5 draft. A guy with numbers like Ryan Ward, 21-plus homers in every full season, 5 of them that he has played in, 2 30-plus home run seasons at the highest level of minor league baseball, and a massive improvement to both K rate and walk rate, will be taken first in the Rule 5 draft. There is no question in my mind. So if you're the Dodgers, you can protect him, and that's fine, but it's a little bit unfortunate if you're Ryan Ward, or you cannot, and Ryan Ward's ability to be a major leaguer just got 1,000 times easier. Because here's how that works, if you're not aware. If a player gets drafted in the Rule 5 draft, say out of AA, because he's been around for a long time but never got past that point, he only has to, by rule, be starting the year in AAA. He does not have to start the year in the big league on the big league club. It has to be one level at where you finished the last season. So because Ryan Ward is a AAA player, and that's where he's played the majority of this year, being a Rule 5 pick means he will have to be on somebody's 26-man opening day roster on that team that takes him in the Rule 5. If they don't take him, if they do not want him on that opening day roster, he will go on waivers. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I might be, that the team that originally left him up to the Rule 5 has availability to get him back. But all that said, it leaves the Dodgers in a precarious position, because do you add the guy to your 40-man and say, hey, he still might make our opening day roster, now we have another 6 years of this guy. So now you've taken up 11 years of this guy's baseball life. He's going to be 33 as a free agent at that point if he runs straight through those 6 years of rookie contracts and arbitration. And now he's going to get probably a 2 to 3 year deal, depending on how well he plays, for the rest of his baseball career, if he's going to play a solid 9 seasons in the league. And because of his age, you're making it even harder for him to get to that 10-year service mark for all the benefits that come with that. So it's a really hard position that Ryan Ward is in, but also that the Dodgers are in and how they handle this situation with this player. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, and I wonder if there's a place at which the MLBPA steps in here, or other teams start calling the Dodgers and say, listen, if you're not going to put this guy on your roster, make him available to us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, this all goes back to roster construction, right, at the end of the day. The Dodgers do a really, really good job from an overall perspective of maintaining high levels of control of players that they really like. It's something that they've always been good at. I do expect that very quickly, once the Dodgers move on from the Conforto contract, you see Ward put on the 40-man roster. I don't expect him to be a guy who's made available to other teams via the Rule 5 draft. I think at the bare minimum, the Dodgers will find a way to get something out of him if he truly is not going to be a piece. Now, when I look at the Dodgers roster and I look at who they have going into the next couple of seasons from a standpoint of the outfield, right now Conforto is their left-handed bat. I get it. Tommy Edmonds, switch hitter. He can obviously play some outfield. I get it. Alex Freeland, who got his first attempts at the major leagues. I totally get it. Another guy, switch hitter, can play corner outfield. However, they don't have a ton from the left side in that lineup that plays in the outfield. If I'm the Dodgers, I'm probably looking at Ryan Ward as an extended piece that I can hold on for a low dollar amount for a long period of time at this point. I liken this to the Brent Rooker situation, right? I've told you multiple times that, Brent, who really came into his own 26, 27, 28, gets this really nice contract with the A's. The A's were told earlier this year that the A's needed to spend money. It would be crazy of me to tell you that the MLBPA didn't have something to do with pushing the fact that the A's probably should spend some of that money on Rooker, a guy who wouldn't have hit free agency similar to Ward till he was 32, 33, and now loses the ability to sign a relatively longer-term contract because of the way we look at age. My great example for you right now is Christian Walker. Christian Walker signed his 3-year deal at 33 years old this year. He's been struggling a bit here in 2025. But again, it was a 3-year deal. Why? Because he didn't hit free agency till, technically speaking, what most people would consider the end of his prime from an overall perspective, or what prime we've seen from major league players. It does generally run from 29 to 34. For most normal players, let's be very clear about that statement. Yes, the superstars generally have longer primes than 29 to 34. However, for sake of argument here, let's stick with normal human beings, not some of these
25 home run guys, not 45 home run guys.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. So either way, I think this is a really, really interesting situation. It's going to have to do a lot with the Dodgers offseason roster configuration. It's going to have a lot to do with what they do in free agency. They are not the type of team that allows guys to walk. Again, keep in mind, Outman, correct me if I'm wrong, Rookie of the Year, found himself in the minors for basically 2 years after putting on that level of performance with a slow start in the 2024 season. He has now been moved and traded, and they've gotten something for him this offseason. My expectation is that Ryan Ward's going to get some chance with them next year. They're not going to allow him to walk just to walk.
No, probably not. He came in third that year, but it was a pretty tough Rookie of the year to win in general, because Corbin Carroll and Kodai Senga were that same year, and he
was the early favorite that year, if I remember correctly. Outman came out pretty strong.
He was putting balls out left and right. Still, now that the wall's gone, one of only 2 lefties to put a ball out over Mount Baltimore. So, guys got pop. Absolutely got talent. But again, you're right.
That's never a problem.
No, but this is what the Dodgers do. You're right. They hang on to talent that they know is talented for a long time until it's no longer a necessary chess piece, and then they move them for something because they are a worthwhile piece to be able to move. And that's where Ryan Ward sits. He was a 9. This is also, just for people's awareness, this is the tough part about being a 9th rounder. If you're not a top 5 rounder, the speed with which you get to move through a system and the opportunities that you get within a good system is really difficult. You have to play even better than much better than a top 5 rounder if you're a 9th rounder, right? You can't just play well relative to everybody else. You have to play heads above everyone else. And I think there's levels at which Ryan Ward has done that. I think there's levels to which he has not. And I think the hard part is he's in a really good organization that is willing to spend money on major league players and not always need to develop and bring up young guys to fill in gaps.
Yeah. Zaire Hope and Josue DePaula were both called up to Double-A to get a cup of tea. Again, why am I bringing that up here? We're talking about two corner outfielders in the Dodgers system, both highly talented, highly rated, very well-known commodities. Many of you may not have known who Ryan Ward was before today. But to Flax's point, those two names I just gave you, you could see both of those names get an opportunity in a Dodgers uniform before Ward, whether that's fair or not. But we'll see what the future holds. Let's get on to the next topic here. The Toronto Blue Jays. Exactly who all of you knew we would be talking about at the top of the AL East come September 9th. So here we are, talking about them potentially running the table in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is the exact opposite of how I expected the AL East to look on September 9th. But that's okay. I think as a baseball fan, it's good to see parity. It's good to see roles reversed. But again, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. We said if they are going to be a good team, their starters need to stay healthy and need to pitch well. And there are guys who have been around for a long time and absolutely have the ability to be good. And I think their biggest struggle right now is guys that have not been around for as long are in their bullpen. And their bullpen is not been great the last half a month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But they're still hitting the ball really well. They're still showing up. You know, I think what's hard when you look at the Blue Jays, there is an air of like, haven't been there, haven't done that. How are they going to manage going down the stretch in a tight race against the Yankees, who had to do this last year, fight for a division, fight to get all the way to the World Series? How are they going to do this against the Red Sox, who are fighting for a while to maintain a wild card spot? One of the better teams that the Red Sox have put together in the last 4 or 5 years, right? Like, how is this team going to show up and respond in those situations? And I think it's helpful that you have starters who can show up and do a thing. It's good that you've got a Scherzer who can lead the staff and say, this is what it's going to feel like when you're there in that moment. Here's what it's going to feel like when you've got your back against the wall and you've got to execute pitches. And it's nice that you've got some guys that are in the lineup that are going to have to maybe, show up or shut up. I just think it's going to come down to the bullpen, as it always does. And I worry about Jeff Hoffman being the guy that they hand the ball to when it's all said and done. And all things aside of who he is as a person and how he behaves, you can't be a closer in the playoffs having higher than 2 home runs per 9. You can't throw fly balls in the playoffs. You have to keep the ball on the ground. And my biggest worry is that he's a high K guy, and if he's not putting the ball past a bat, the ball is being put in play, and it's being put in play in the air. And they play in a ballpark where weather doesn't matter in the playoffs.
I think that's completely fair. I started, though, before we get to the bullpen, which, yes, the bullpen has not thrown great over the last month or so. However, when you do look at what that bullpen's put together from an overall perspective this year, they have a bullpen where almost every single guy has something under a 3.5 ERA and has showed up on a regular basis. This is where I go back to the age-old may as well have a slump at the right time, because we can't slump at the wrong time. And I think that's what you're seeing a little bit out of the bullpen. Also, a lot of younger guys tend to see fatigue down the stretch because they haven't had this level of workload. Again, we talk about the dog days of summer and the grind that they've gone through. But I do expect that, for the most part, that bullpen can hold together. We'll talk about Hoffman a little bit more in detail here shortly. The rotation, though, is full of a bunch of veteran arms who are going to do nothing but grind out innings throughout the playoffs. They are guys who, yes, 100% have been hit throughout their careers at times and have at times struggled to keep the ball in the yard. Jose Barrios, I'm looking directly at you because we talk about it. He's had a much better season keeping the ball in the yard here in 2025. But Kevin Gossman, throwing to a 3.63 ERA, sinker ball guy, heavy ground ball rate, that's going to really bode well for them in the playoffs if he can keep the ball down. Chris Bassett, a guy with a 6-pitch mix, can take multiple pitches to the glove side and the arm side. We've watched him be a crafty vet for a long time at this point. Jose Barrios may not have as dominant of a fastball as he's had in the past, but has put together a very, very gritty 2025 season, pitching to the tune of a 4.02 ERA and a 4.50 WHIP. Shane Bieber, somebody we've talked about a lot recently on the pod. He's a guy who could be a starter for them in the playoffs. Over his few starts, 17.1 innings, a 4.15 ERA, and a almost 11 Ks per nine. He's looked great since he's came back. The confidence level that we've seen from him is as impressive as anybody who's coming back from a major arm injury. You mentioned Max Scherzer, a guy I will always love for what he did in DC, but I would agree with you. Mad Max is somebody who can really, really help this group of guys through a playoff stretch and through the grind. And let's give a shout out to Kent State alum Eric Lauer, who has put together a great year so far for them, starting quite a few games, a 3.32 ERA, and again, a left-handed option who could be coming out of the could be coming at you as a starter here in the postseason. I like what I get from the rotation. I want a little bit more from you on that. I just think this is a very gritty group. It's a group that I can see doing exactly what you said earlier today, which is I didn't have my best stuff, but I was still able to grind through an outing and keep my team in a spot to win.
Yeah, I think what I love is that they have guys that have pitched in the postseason, right? Like, it's not extremely foreign to these guys. They've been in that atmosphere. But let's be honest. If all things stay the same going into game one of what would be the ALDS, they're playing in either New York or Boston in some of those games. Those are not easy playoff atmospheres. I love the fact that they are made up of veterans. Those are the kind of guys that have, no matter which way you slice it, have pitched in a major league game that was a tough atmosphere. It is not an uncomfortable situation for them anymore at this point. And I almost think those are guys that rise to the occasion. Bieber has had success in the playoffs. Scherzer has had success in the playoffs. Gossman has had success in the playoffs. These are guys that know how to pitch in tight games and in situations. And I love that Eric Lauer's thrown as well as he has, because you know what? You need someone who's a little bit of a crafty lefty to throw things off. I just think that on the whole, when I look at this rotation, that's what's going to drive this team. And you saw it, honestly, in New York. And the bats fell short in New York for them, honestly, the last couple of games. The bullpen did fine. The starters did fine, showed up, pitched against a tough top half of a lineup, and just didn't get a lot of support behind them from the guys that have been doing it all year. I think Addison Barger's been struggling a little bit. Like you said, slumping at the right time. The likelihood is they're trying to figure out what other teams are seeing in his swing and taking advantage of. And the likelihood is they'll hopefully get him going in the other direction. Guys like Nathan Lucas, Miles Straw, Ernie Clement are doing a good job around what you have affectionately named the three-headed monster. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is being Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's hitting 300. He's hitting 25-plus bombs. Bo Bichette is doing the Bo Bichette thing, right? Like 200 hits in a season, going to lead the league in hits again. With Trey Turner going on the IL, almost guaranteed he leads the league in hits now. And George Springer is being the George Springer that the Blue Jays had at the beginning and were promised and did not have the last 2 years. I don't care who you are. This guy is an electric factory. I don't know if you saw the other day, Greg Amsinger called his leadoff bomb. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. Now, to be fair, a clock is right twice a day. But a broken clock, is right twice a day. But all these things said, the Blue Jays have a lineup that can drive them through the postseason. They just need arms that can keep them in ball games and keep the momentum on their side. Veteran pitchers know how to control the pace of a game. They know how to control the momentum of a game. And they know how to have ownership of what they can control and then let the offense do the job. I don't think it's crazy to say the Blue Jays are the team coming out of the American League.
I mean, I think if it was, we wouldn't be here, right? And I think that's the big piece. Finally having Springer be the player that they thought they were getting his 2025 has been an absolute resurgence, 27 home runs. He's got a 154 OPS plus for everybody who just adores that stat. I really like what I'm seeing from the middle of that lineup. Again, you mentioned some of these underappreciated assets, as I called them, that the Toronto Blue Jays have currently. Ernie Clement, a guy who's been asked to play a ton of positions and a lot of third base for them this year, has a 307 WOBA, which is just slightly under a league average bat from a technical perspective, but a guy who comes in with an 11 OAA at the position and only an 11% K rate, so he's putting together very good at bats. Miles Straw through 120 games, slightly below league average as a hitter, but again, 9 outs above average in the outfield. He's only whiffing at a 17% race. I mean, that's exactly what this is, right? And then to boot, because nobody's going to want to talk about it, but guys, Dalton Varsho's back as well, right? They're getting some health from guys who can be huge contributors down the stretch. I expect Ty France to continue to improve and really help this roster with not only his bat, but his versatility. And again, the fact that this is a guy who has played some playoff games and is at this point a veteran in the league. I really like the lineup they put on the field. I really like the fact that the rotation, again, is filled with guys who I'm not scared to throw in hostile environments in the playoffs. I think, more than anything, the question's going to become, can they close games? And it's the bullpen and, of course, the closer at the end of the day and Jeff Hoffman. Hoffman can be an electric factory. I don't think anybody's questioning that. As Flack said, this is a K-first closer. 11.64 Ks per 9 this season, but he is walking 3.13 per 9. He is giving up over 2 home runs per 9. Yeah, I get it, guys. He only throws 1 inning, but 2 home runs per 9 in 1 inning equates to, 4.5, right? There's an opportunity here for teams to put the ball out of the ballpark on him.
It's like 1 in every 3 outings.
My big piece with Hoffman is very simple. If I'm the Blue Jays and if I'm a Blue Jays fan, what I really want to see is a good 2 weeks moving into the playoffs from Hoffman. I'd love to see in September the bullpen to simply just look more like themselves because the arms out there are not poor. I do think this team has a chance to run the table this year. I think they have the pieces, and I think it all started at the beginning of this year when they finally got the Guerrero Jr. deal done, and that was no longer looming over the entirety of the organization.
Can I tell you who else I think is going to be an impact for them down the stretch and in the postseason that we are not talking enough about because he hasn't really gotten to play a whole lot. Well, he's gotten to play a good bit this year, but he's gone in and out because of injury. If he can stay healthy through the last stretch of this season, I genuinely think Andres Jimenez could be a really, really impactful player for this team. You can plug him in anywhere in the infield, and you are getting a Gold Glove caliber player.
Platinum glove.
That in the playoffs does worlds for whatever pitcher is pitching, knowing they've got guys like that behind them. I also just think he can get himself back to a level where he is taking good, tough at-bats. If you guys think about the way that playoff at-bats and late in the season at-bats happen late in games, the thing that generally makes really good relievers struggle is having to throw more pitches than they normally would. They're always facing good hitters. They're always facing hitters that are just a hair more locked into everything they're seeing. They're a little bit more understanding of what's coming at them, and they get a little bit tighter. If Andres Jimenez can just take long at-bats, which he's got the bat-to-ball skills to do, I think he could be a really impactful piece for guys that are higher in the lineup where he could be at the bottom and do a really good job of either turning the lineup over with guys on base, himself included, or turn the lineup over with pitchers having thrown a lot of pitches already, or just beat down a bullpen. And it sounds really in the weeds and really dumb, but this is the kind of thing where you look at a fullback in football and how good he is at blocking for the guy that scores all the 2-yard touchdowns. And without that guy, you're not scoring any of those 2-yard touchdowns. I think Andres Gimenez is going to be one of those key pieces for the Blue Jays down the stretch as an offense that's going to be really important to allow guys like the Bo Bichette's, like the George Springers, like the Vlad Guerreros, and even the Dalton Varshos to really provide some power towards the top of the lineup.
Couldn't agree more. I think the Toronto Blue Jays have an excellent chance this season to really put on a show in the playoffs and be a thorn in the side of many teams who have consistently been there in the AL over the last 5 to 6 years. Flax, there's been some demons in the second half. And there's some guys who have what seems to be exercising their demons from the first half is really maybe the better way to put this.
Usually how it goes.
You know, I don't know if you heard, but Juan Soto's having a down season.
That's what they say. I don't really know where they're getting that from, but that's what they say.
We're going to talk about 5 guys here in this segment that have had excellent second halves coming off of what we'll simply call disappointing first halves, maybe underperforming first halves, or guys who have just simply broken out here in the second half and showed us what they could be for the rest of their career. Let's start with the $765 million man, Juan Soto, in 45 games since the break. 264, 413, 564, 15 home runs for a 413 WOBA, a 171 WRC plus, and he's been worth 2.1 F-WAR. Juan is exactly who we thought he is, and the Mets needed every single piece of him heating up here in the back half.
Yeah, can we talk about real quick that differential between on-base percentage and batting average? Like, I love batting average. I think it's a great marker of how consistently and truly you put the ball in play. But if a guy is going to have a differentiation of 146 points between average and on-base percentage, call it another 30 singles. Like, he might as well be hitting 280 with a 350 OBP. It's the same difference when the guy's got 29 stolen bases this year. What are we doing? I mean, this is an unbelievable season that Juan Soto is putting together. And people questioning whether or not that holds value, by the way, for a guy who got paid $765 million, or, you get it. Like, the season he is putting together is unbelievable. Under the pressures of being in a new place and taking on that money, not easy. Doing it in a moment when the Mets truly needed it, because the Mets were struggling offensively. And as soon as Juan Soto started turning it on, Francisco Lindor started playing better. A man that I once called non-impactful. I never remember his name. This is crazy.
Mark Vientos!
Thank you. Mark Vientos started playing better. He is one of those guys that puts coal in the engine. And that is why I love that Juan Soto's doing this head and above everybody else. A 171 WRC plus in a 45-game stretch is absurd.
Listen, he's been excellent. This is where I remind everybody, and if you haven't got to read it, take a look at our article on WOBA. It's why it is, in my opinion, the best evaluation metric overall from a perspective of hitters. He has the highest WOBA of the guys we're going to talk about. And part of it simply does go back to exactly what Flax said, of the fact that when you're getting on base, regardless of how you're getting on base, it's a value to your team. It doesn't have to be 30 singles if it's 30 walks, but you're still doing damage. You're still aggressive at the plate. It makes you that much more valuable from an overall standpoint. Soto has been one of the better players in all of baseball this year. In reality, regardless of what many people have wanted to say. We're going to see if this loads real quick. I did want to bring up his August splits because he was fantastic in August of this year, but it doesn't look like.
Well, I was going to say, while you load that, it's crazy. I remember somebody telling me that he couldn't hit without Judge in the lineup and getting that protection. I can't believe he's actually doing this without Judge in the same lineup as him. I didn't know that was possible.
Well, turns out Juan Soto's Juan Soto.
Yeah.
Fangraph split tool doesn't want to roll up, so that's okay. We'll move on to the next guy on our list. A guy that a lot of people were beating the crap out of in the first half. Even I was beating the crap out of him in the first half a little bit. Julio Rodriguez, affectionately known as J-Rod by the Mariners fans, 47 games in the second half, 297, 328, 604 slug, 16 home runs, a 394 WOBA, 161 WRC plus for a 2.5 F4. You were diving into him heavily today while I was making sales calls.
Yep.
And I'm going to let you dive into that here momentarily. But we are talking about, again, another younger guy signed a very large contract very quickly. The expectations on J-Rod to be a table setter for the Mariners, especially in this window, are extremely high. Cal Raleigh has had a spectacular season this year, which has honestly really helped take some of maybe that light or pressure off of Julio, who had a tougher, air quotes, first half. But it really seems like it might not have been all of the first half, and there might be some niches to that discussion.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was getting into Tim Kirkshin territory with, like, you know, against lefties on a Wednesday afternoon before the game started at 2 p.m. But it was one of those things where, like, you have to poke and prod to figure out what's going on with Julio and why this is the case. Because career Julio splits between first and second half, not just this year, are pretty substantial. Where we're talking about a guy who production numbers are fairly similar, but second half career, he's a 299 hitter. First half, he's a 260 hitter. And so I started looking, you know, is it righties, lefties? No, not a huge differentiation. Is it month by month? No, it's all fairly similar. And what I started to notice was he really only hits a couple different positions in the order, and it's generally batting second or batting third. That's how it's been most of his career, at least, as well. He's generally a better hitter around the 3-4 hole than anything. But in the larger sample sizes, he is a better hitter hitting 1 or hitting 3. He's generally not great hitting 2. And what I kind of believe around that is pitch mix and pitch selection based on who else is around him in the lineup. This is a guy that probably does need a little bit more protection in the lineup. Just because of what he's able to do against off-speed versus fastballs, if we're going to be quite honest about it. And if I could break down the numbers and look under these very significant niches of batting at home, because his home and away splits on his career are also pretty substantial. 293 hitter on the road, 254 hitter career at home. He's got 20 more home runs on the road than he does at home in his career. Again, when you start breaking these things down and you start looking at them, it makes you wonder what's going on here. And I think a lot of it is the pitches he chooses to swing at because of the pitches he gets. He's not a high walk rate guy. He is a swinger. He's always been a free swinger. And so a guy who is a free swinger kind of needs to hit in spots where he's going to get better pitches to hit because he's swinging regardless of where he's at. And so positioning in the order can matter a lot depending on who's around him. And so I think it's extremely significant this year that batting in the 3-hole versus the 2-hole, the first half of the season at home was atrocious. On the road wasn't that much better, but it was better. Batting in the 3-hole at home versus on the road, marginal difference. So he was able to be pretty successful at home in the 3-hole in a position where he was going to get a little bit more to hit. I'm sure there's a level at which we could even get to day games and night games and see a pretty substantial difference at home versus away. But not even going that far, there is a little bit of differentiation in where you bat him in the lineup and what is made available to him in that spot. The only other thing I'll say for him, I'm not really sure why this is, and I don't know that Ryan even saw this as much as I did. When I talk about hitting, I'm very, very consistent about what I care most about. And it's generally like 2 things. 1, I want your hands and your lower half to be connected as one. And 2, I want your head still. If your head's moving all over the place, you're never going to hit the baseball. And if your lower half and your hands aren't connected, and your hands are behind your hips, and your hands are behind your lower body going, they're generally going to lag and they're going to be late to the ball. When I watch Julio's swings on fastballs early in the season, in the April, March, a little bit of May timeframe, it felt like watching it that Julio's hands were a little bit behind his hips. Felt like they were dragging. It felt like the body would go and then the hands would lag just a hair behind. It doesn't have to be much for it to be impactful. And now later in the season, after watching him hit some fastballs, it felt like they were a little bit more in sync, almost like the lower half was a little slower and the hands were catching up to it. And he's got plenty of speed and plenty of power for things to be a hair slower and still get going. And generally what happens, and I think Ethan even showed this in one of his breakdowns, is that when everything's connected, you actually end up being faster. So his bat speed is up a tick, and where he's at on plane tends to be a little bit more optimal when he's in that position. But again, they're really hard things to see, and they're really hard things to train. Sometimes it's just the space that your body's in during a different time of the season. There's a possibility that by the time he gets to the lower second half of the season, his lower half is just moving a hair slower and it's letting his hands catch up. As crazy as that sounds, it may just work in his favor that way. In the first half of the season, his body's a little too fresh and quick. So that's what I have on Julio Rodriguez.
And I think before we move on from Julio Rodriguez, the irony of us talking about where he hits in the order is something that I find very entertaining. From a standpoint of run creation and run value, Julio Rodriguez makes a ton of sense to be a guy who would hit in the 3-hole for you over the 2-hole. 2 and 4 generally tend to be your best 2 bats. I'm not here saying that he's not one of your best 2 bats, but Julio historically has been a guy who does put the ball on the ground a ton. The 3-hole is a position that actually sees less hitters on base on a regular basis. So him getting to hit in that spot makes a ton of sense for production because he's less likely to ground into a double play. And then additionally, too, this is a pop first type guy due to how much of a free swinger he is. So you have a higher run value opportunity in the 3-hole with him because the best way to score there is generally to put a ball over the fence. Additionally to that, when you look at the way they're constructing their lineup, Cal Raleigh being protection for him is huge. At the end of the day, especially in the 2025 season, you're going to pitch to Julio Rodriguez before you pitch to Cal Raleigh, ergo giving a free swinger more things in the zone to potentially pound. So I love your breakdown. I like what we've done here with Julio. Let's move on to Shea Langeliers, a.k.a. Shea Langeliers, his actual name. This man has exploded here in the second half, to say the least.
August.
Unbelievable August is unbelievably true at this point. 42 games, 316, 353, 684 slug, 17 home runs, a 379 WOB, a 177 WRC plus for a grand total of 2.5 FWAR here in the second half. Langeliers has shown everybody what his ceiling looks like from the right side of the plate. We're talking about a guy who is truly, truly showing everybody that things go right. He's a 40-plus home run guy at the dish, but it's gap-to-gap power, and it's to both sides of the field. He has been extremely impressive. Excited to see where he continues to go. Flax, your thoughts on Langeliers?
Yeah, 11 of those 18 home runs in the month of August. That's why he won Player of the Month, by the way. Behind that, he hit 284 in the month, 20 runs scored, 22 RBIs in the month of August. And he started pretty good in September. 2 doubles, 4 singles, 6 for 18 for a 333 average. 4 games into the month. It's one of those pieces of their young core that we talked about this offseason. We talked about it with Jack Wilson, right? Like, there is a point at which you know where you're headed. You're headed to Vegas. You're headed to a place where you're going to make a ton of money. Spend it now. Lock these guys up. All of them right now. I believe they got Shea Langeliers through a trade with the Braves, if I'm not mistaken. Sent Sean Murphy. That was the Matt Olson trade. Came over with Christian Pache and Joey Estes. And Ryan Cusick, my bad. Can't forget him. But, I mean, what a trade for Oakland. You basically ended up swapping an older first baseman for a younger generational level catcher that is actually improved defensively for you over time as well. So I love the second half he's putting together. I think it's a big reason why this team has played some really good baseball. I think top 5 baseball in the league since the All-Star break, which they did the same thing last year. I hope they carry it over into next year. But he's doing a good job of managing his pitching staff and really growing into that centerpiece for that team.
Yeah, Langoliers came back from a minor stint in June on the IL and just truly hasn't looked back. It's going to be very interesting this offseason to potentially break down what type of changes he may have made during that time period, and or if he just simply wasn't healthy for March, April, and May, which is totally possible here. This is a guy who since July has done nothing but improve. The power numbers have been through the roof. He's hit 18 home runs since the start of July. That's 18 of his 29 home runs that he's hit so far this season. Again, we're looking at a guy who's proven 40-plus bomb pop is something that he has. Match that with the rest of the A's young core right now, and Nick Kurtz, Jacob Wilson, Tyler Soderstrom, Lawrence Butler. I mean, we could go on and on because guess what? They've got some more in the pipeline.
Yeah, they got a lot of them.
I think the A's have a very bright future. Frankly, I'll say it just like anybody would. Wish it was in Oakland, but it looks like it's going to be in Vegas. Moving right along here to a guy who got a ton of scrutiny early on this season after signing a very large contract with the San Francisco Giants, but has really turned it on, shown that he is a true captain for the San Francisco Giants, and that's Willy Adames. 45 games since the break. He's hitting .244, .337, and slugging .536 with 15 home runs, a .369 WOBA, a .141 WRC plus, and 2 F4. Adames has been swinging it. Dude plays defense at a high level all the time, and guess what? He's looking like that guy who could be the first full season San Francisco Giant to hit 30 home runs since Barry Bonds himself.
And that was going to be my will they, won't they today before we change that in the outline. But, I mean, he's got, what, 20 games to hit 3 home runs? I think the potential,
I believe that's correct.
I think the potential is there, right? The potential is absolutely there. My guess is because he's going to get to play, I'm assuming, in NL West ballparks for most of the rest of the season. You're talking about Dodger Stadium, good ballpark to hit home runs in. San Diego, if you're putting him out to dead left, pretty good ballpark to hit home runs in. I don't know if he's got any games left in Colorado or in it's escaping me. But either way, start looking at some of the places he's going to be playing. There's opportunities there.
Chase Field.
Thank you. Golly. Also, not a bad place to hit home runs to dead left. But either way, start looking at Willy Adames and, again, this is the Buster Posey thing. He's getting guys that he knows are going to play their role in this organization. Buster Posey's not going to put together a roster of superstars. That's not his game. That's not how that's not the organization or the teams that he played on. Everybody's going to play their role. He's going to play really good defense at shortstop. He's going to hit for power. And once he gets going in San Francisco, he will not look back. I think this is the second half that we look at going into the end of next season and say, wow, since the second half of last year, the last 195 games that Willy Adames has played, he's had some unreal power and some unreal numbers. And I think it's really exciting to see this for a Giants team. They're still pushing for a wild card spot. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. 4 games out, and absolutely an opportunity to chase some teams down. Mets are about to play the Phillies. That's going to be a really tough matchup for them. An opportunity for the Giants to potentially make up ground on that last wild card spot. And I think Willy Adames is going to be a key piece in making that happen.
Yeah, Adames historically does strike out a lot. He also walks a lot, which is very interesting. Yeah. And what this should tell you, and his metrics do show this, is Adames is a very aggressive swinger at balls in the zone. You have to love that, right? His job is to do damage to balls in the zone. He's always going to be a guy who's going to have a slightly lowered average due to that aggressiveness and the aggressiveness of his swing to the ball in the zone. However, at the end of the day, he's a guy who is going to play his role exactly how you said. We're talking about a very solid defender, a 3 OAA at shortstop. He has a above average arm grade, and of course, he's a guy who can run a little bit with a slightly above average sprint speed. Adames, great ad. We talked about it before the season. You know, there's a shortstop right now who's going to be a free agent here this offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays, who, though, is a little bit different of a makeup offensively, will probably be looking at a Willie Adames, Trey Turner type contract in his future. In Bo Bichette, Adames playing well down the stretch probably bodes very well for Bichette at the end of the day. Let's get to our last guy here. One of my favorites, the Pasquatch himself, Vinny Pasquantino, has really turned on the power here in the second half. Over 45 games, 238, 309, a 541 slug, 14 home runs, a 354 WOBA, a 124 WRC+. Pasquantino was a guy that the Royals were really looking at to have a big year this year. He's well known as a clubhouse leader for that group, next to Salvador Perez. The second half for him has been huge on a Kansas City Royals team that is pushing to be a playoff team here this year in 2025. Obviously, the prospects of that have fallen off a little bit, but Pasquantino in that lineup, some of the pieces that are coming up for the Royals, Bobby Witt continuing to improve, Salvador Perez looking like a potential ageless wonder because every time you count him out, he starts hitting again. I've loved what I've seen from the Pasquatch. I think this is huge.
Yeah. Vinny Pasquantino, I mean, what's really fascinating is his power numbers in the second half, high, pretty solid, but his average is extremely low. And what's so fascinating to me about this is strikeout numbers are much lower, walk numbers are higher. You've got all these differentiating factors that don't tell you he's having a great back half, but considering the amount of plate appearances he's actually had, putting up some of the power numbers he has in that time period, we're talking about a 541 slug on the back half of the year, an 850 OPS. This is a guy that if he can do this over the stretch of an entire season, is a premier middle of the order bat. And when you start looking at his career up to this point, the biggest thing for me is we're 141 games in for him this year. This is not a guy that has had to spend a 20-plus game stretch on the IL. Think about how much time he has had to spend off of the baseball field the last 2 years. All we wanted to see was a full season from Vinny, and we're getting it. We're getting a guy who's slugging 470, a 792 OPS that's only getting better, a 119 OPS plus, 29 bombs up to this point. The likelihood is he's going to be over 30. And what I like even more than this is that he's not hitting as poorly against lefties as I think we would have thought. It's not good by any stretch of the imagination. Let's say that. But the slug is better than I expected it to be. He is still hitting home runs against lefties, and there's room for improvement. I like the opportunity that he's going to have this offseason to work on something like that. But we're now not at a point where we need to work on being a big league hitter anymore. We need to work on fixing some gaps in the game as a whole. And I'm excited to see what Vinny brings to the table next year after this year that he's had.
Yeah, half his home runs in half the amount of games that he played in the first half is really the best way for me to put it here. Again, another guy similar to Langoliers that we're talking about who has 40 home run potential really as long as he stays healthy at the end of the day. Sure, there are some splits gaps, absolutely, but Pasquantino very obviously has the ability and capability to be a middle-of-the-order bat for a long time for the Kansas City Royals. He's also a guy who could be getting more protection or be providing protection to some large bats that are coming up through that system.
Yeah, I agree. And one other thing. This offseason, if I hear one person talk about Vinny Pasquantino's WAR, I'm going to throw my phone at you. He is a first baseman. WAR does not matter because it is destroyed by being a first baseman. That's all I have.
But can he scoop the ball? Okay, I'm done. I
think so, actually. I think he's pretty good. I think he's a pretty good scooper. All right, what do we got closing things out tonight? What do we got?
Well, there was a group of relievers. Closers. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I
come on now.
do that. There's a group of closers that you and I put together before the show, and this was going to be will they, won't they, but now it's going to be who do you want? I guess that's what we're calling this. Who do you want? And those 6 closers. Flax, I don't know if you still have your screen up. I was kind of hoping you did. And if you don't, we'll pull out a phone and we'll make this happen because it is on Twitter. However, basically what we did is we took a look at the discussion that's happening right now around Aroldis Chapman. Aroldis Chapman is having one of the best, absolutely, one of the best seasons we have seen out of a closer in MLB history. There is no question about that statement. But what's so fun about this discussion is if it came down to it and you could take any closer from any season of all time, who would you take? And we took these 6 guys. Now, let's throw an asterisk on this really quick before people jump down our throats. Yeah, 2003 Eric Gagne can absolutely be your choice if you'd like it to be. Okay? He was spectacular. We know we didn't leave him off just to do that. Maybe we did, just for fun, to see what you guys had to say on Twitter. However, of the 6 guys on the screen, Flax, I already know who your answer is, but for semantics, of these 6 guys, in Game 7 of the World Series, you need 3 outs. You get them from their best season, which is currently showing on our screen. Those names, for those of you who are listening to us on the podcast, are Fernando Rodney in his best year. Flax, could you go ahead and read off the years as well as I do this,
Yes,
please?
that's
Thank
Fernando
you.
Rodney in 2012, Jonathan Papelbon in 2006, Emmanuel Clase in 2024, Zach Britton in 2016, Aroldis Chapman this year, and Dennis Eckersley in 1990. So
All right, semantics, Flax.
I would even let this guy pitch in a tie game for a wild card. 2016 Zach Britton. 2016 Zach Britton, I don't know how to explain to people. It was the most shutdown, dominant reliever season I have ever seen out of a lefty. And I think it's hard because it's like a what have you done for me lately scenario. If you're a closer, the only thing I ever care about is how many runs do you give up in the innings that you throw. I don't care about your strikeouts. I don't care about your walks. Do you let guys cross home plate? Zach Britton put up a .54 ERA in 67 innings pitched and 69 appearances out of the bullpen. Good for 47 saves, an 8.03 ERA plus. 8.03. Nobody is even remotely close to this season in ERA plus. A 29% K rate and a 7% walk rate. Yeah, I look at this list of guys and I just think, you know, he's going to give me my best chance to keep runs off the board in any amount of innings that he's going to throw.
I like it. I mean, listen, I remember that Zach Britton season, and the word untouchable is kind of the first place that I go when I think about what he's done. I'm gonna fan the flames just because I feel that that's my job right here.
Come on.
And I'm gonna take 2025 Aroldis Chapman. Why am I gonna take 2025 Aroldis Chapman in this scenario? One, because his shadow is way scarier than he is, and that was a pretty cool picture. Two, Chapman's dominance this year has been through the swing and the miss. 55 innings pitched, 81 strikeouts. What I believe Chapman is bringing to the table here is the fact that he's simply going to beat you before you can put the ball in play, and that is something that does not come around on a regular basis. But we actually tend to see it more for guys who are high leverage and non-closers at this rate than we do closers. A guy getting the last 3 outs, we don't see it as much. I'll play the flip side of this too. I have a weird feeling we'd both pick Dennis Eckersley had we been old enough to watch that season.
Well, I've seen highlights of it, and I will say this: like, you want to talk about, you know, Aroldis Chapman's shadow being scarier than he is. When Dennis Eckersley was on the mound, he had a presence about him that genuinely scared hitters. I mean, you talk about Canada the bullpen for 73 innings in 63 appearances. Like, or Class A last year, 74 innings, 74 appearances. Fernando Rodney in 2012, 74 and 2/3 in 76 appearances. Eckersley went 73 innings in 63 appearances. He was not just out there to throw one inning. He was out there to come out in the 8th and set himself up to then throw the 9th. He put up a 6.03 ERA plus, a .61 ERA that season with 48 saves. I don't know how to explain how incredible. And on top of that, he only walked 4 guys in 73 innings. That just tells me not only did he intimidate guys, he was more than happy to throw the ball right down your throat. He was more than happy to just make you hit his stuff, and he knew you couldn't. And I think that is awesome. Now, I do want to throw out some different names that we got a couple of answers on here on Twitter that I thought were fun. 2015 Wade Davis. I know you had that pulled up before. I don't know if you still have it pulled up. Another one was 2024 Kirby Yates. And I think this may go down as like one of the most underrated seasons out of the bullpen that we'll see. Kirby Yates for the Rangers in 2024 had a 1.17 ERA, a 3.26 ERA plus, a .83 whip, and finished 8th in the Cy Young voting. Hit 85 strikeouts in 61 games pitched, 61 innings. It's a pretty incredible year out of him.
Yeah, 2015 Wade Davis was a dog, .94 ERA over 67.1 innings. He saved 17 games, also had 18 holds that year in a put me in when the best guys are at the dish type role, a.k.a. what we now know as the high leverage role. Thank you, Andrew Miller Time himself. 78 Ks that season. You know, the one that I thought was fun that nobody would ever sit here and talk about was Blake Trinan's 2018 season for the A's. It was pretty spectacular. He did a lot of good things, another sub-1 ERA type guy. I'll leave everybody on this. For anybody who was confused why Mariano Rivera's name never came up, it's simply because the question was not, who do I want to close games for the next 15 years? It was, whose singular season in that situation are we taking? Believe it or not, Mariano Rivera is simply by far the most consistent closer. Him and Billy Wagner would have easily made this list had that been the question. However, the question was single season production numbers here. Either way, enjoyed that one, Flax. Nice find by you here before the show. If you're interested, go find that on Twitter. Comment who we've missed. We'll probably see 2003 Eric Gagne until we fall over, but we'll wait to see how many times that gets commented. Past that, I don't have a ton else. Flax, anything you need to tell the people before we let them go here on Tuesday or whenever you are listening?
No, I got nothing else. Just have a good weekend. Have a good day. Enjoy yourself and spread some happiness.
Enjoy baseball, everybody. As always, have a great week.